spiritual paths to truth and meaning, and we support each one another as we explore these paths. I would especially like to welcome our guests and welcome those again who have visited us before. Are there any visitors? No. Oh, there are some visitors. It is the custom of our congregation to invite you and stand and give your name and where you are from, if you feel comfortable doing so. Are there any visitors who feel comfortable introducing themselves?
Yeah, I'm Scott Mitchell from Naperville and from Samaritan Care Council.
Welcome. Welcome. Sorry. Okay, that's fine. Welcome. Welcome back. Welcome to everyone visiting today. Please join us after the service for our coffee hour. We would love to have a chance to get to know you better. Our minister, Reverend Tom Capo, and our congregational life coordinator, Mary Law, our members, and all of our members are eager to meet you. Please feel free to approach anyone with a green cup with the questions you might have, or any cup and any questions you may have. Our service can be heard outside the glass doors at the back of the sanctuary should anyone feel the need to leave the service for any reason. There are chairs provided for your convenience. One special announcement today. Next Saturday, March 17th, 6 days from today, we're having an event here at the church called Spring Sharing. There will be a free breakfast and a free lunch, 8:30 and noon. I wrote down those times. The morning we'll have 5 different workshops that seem to be uniquely UU-esque type workshops. I think there'll be more information downstairs. The afternoon we'll have, after lunch, a contra dancing lesson / dance, I guess you say. This is a unique, a new way that we're trying to do a sort of a one-day consolidated annual pledge drive. So please come and maybe over the next 6 days, think about how much you would like to pledge to the church for the next fiscal year, June to May of this coming year. Please, there will be people at this spring sharing to talk, share as much as you want to know about the pledge and finances of the church, and get that all coordinated. Please silence all your pagers. I shall still say pagers. Raise your hand if you have a pager. But that's what it is. Thank you.
We light this chalice with hope for a new world.
I invite you to rise in body or spirit, and we're going to say our mission statement, which is printed in your order of service and also up here on the wall. We gather as an inclusive community to grow in character, mind, and spirit, and to transform the world toward fairness, love, and compassion. Please be seated. Well, good morning. It is a beautiful morning out there. It's getting warmer slowly. My wife said that there were these little things called snow somethings. They're little snowdrops. Yeah. I went walking today. Well, I'm Reverend Tom Capo, and I'm the minister here at DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church. And this is Gemma Gunther behind me. She's our ministerial intern. And Gemma will be talking today about the Me Too movement and issues of sexual violence against women. Gemma and I are very aware that this topic can bring up some difficult feelings. In the order of service, we have included a resource list, and we've set up a quiet room for those who might benefit from it. It's the Whitney Young Room, which is just inside the administrative offices. You go past the staff boxes, and it's on your right. Also, members of our pastoral care team will be available, as will I, after the service for anyone who wants to talk. So I want to open this morning's worship with these words by Unitarian Universalist Mike Johnson. It's always good to give thanks. All that we have is a gift from life. Our food, our relationships, our shelter from the cold. And when we give thanks, it's also good to be mindful of all the people and notice those who are suffering and do what we can to ease their suffering and change its causes. So today we give thanks for life, even as we explore suffering. We must always be aware that they must be together so that our hearts are strong for this journey. Now I'd like you to listen to a video. It's a testimony of actor and sexual assault survivor Gabrielle Union. Her words provide another frame for our discussion and the Me Too movement. The video is from her appearance on the Steve Harvey Show in December.
Let's talk about this book for a minute because, boy, you got really real in this book, opening up about some pretty intense experiences in your life.
Yeah.
Why'd you want to do that now?
You know what? Because so many people are suffering in silence about a number of different things. And we all feel like we're on an island by ourselves, like we're screaming into a hurricane, and no one is hearing us. Nobody is reaching out saying, I got you, I see you. And by me sharing my truth, I'm saying, girl, man, I've been there, I got you, I see you, and I'm gonna show you how I got to the other side, whole and healthy and happy.
Yeah. Give me an example of something that you want a reader to take away, something in this book that some people might be able to relate to.
There's, with what's everything that's happening right now, dealing with sexual assault, sexual harassment, sexual violence. You know, I talk about in the book being raped at gunpoint, right? But what we're seeing a lot right now is a lot of victim blaming and shaming. And for that very reason, more and more people are gonna stay silent when they see the public reaction.
Absolutely.
So by me sharing my story and my testimony, and by saying, even though I was raped at gunpoint at work, I had a tunic on and leggings, people still ask me what I had on.
You know what? Is that crazy?
It's insane, and that's what drives people further and further, deeper underground, and into suffering in silence. And I say no more. We have to stop the victim blaming, stop the victim shaming, and really put the onus of sexual violence on the perpetrator, not on the victim. And I've had enough, and I've put it in the book.
Yeah, because, you know, I was watching this thing on TV, not to mention who they were talking about. Of course, everybody knows. And a lady went into a basement with the guy because he told her to come down. And then, you know what some people say? Well, why did you go in the basement? It was at a party, it was in a public building, and he was giving her a tour. And now people want to know, why did you go downstairs? He was giving her a tour of a building in public. You go downstairs.
And I always have to say, no one asks to be raped. No one has it coming. You know what I mean? Rape can happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time. It doesn't matter what you have on. It doesn't matter the decisions that you make. I hear from people, especially through this book tour, as I'm getting to see people, I had a snowsuit on. I was 8. I was coming from my job at the hospital in scrubs.
Right.
I was 57. This is, you can't, it's happening in our communities, in our churches, on the streets. In every community. You can't price your way out of it, which is what my dad thought. I'm gonna move my kids out to this good suburb. I've raised nice, good girls, and I was still raped. It can happen to anyone at any time, anywhere. And I just wanna share that as much as I can and let people know you are not alone, it is not your fault, and you didn't ask for it.
Wow.
Today, we're going to address heterosexual interactions. This doesn't mean we think sexual aggression is only a heterosexual issue. It just means that sexual aggression in the hetero population is the topic. And sexual violence is not just a woman's issue. Sexual violence and manipulation happen to men as well. But in our world right now, we must recognize and affirm that women have experienced and continue to experience a lion's share of sexual manipulation and abuse. If the cultural dynamics of sexual abuse and violence in our world are going to change, men must stand up and be allies of women. I am a cisgender, white male, and I want to be an ally, as I suspect the men in this room wish to be. But there are a few things we need to talk about. To be an ally means we need to understand what consent is. What does consent mean in any sexual interaction between people? Consent, I'm going to use a metaphor, can be compared to asking someone if they want a piece of cake. If they say no, you don't cut them a piece of cake and force them to eat it. Kathy Young, a contributor to Reason magazine, acknowledges that no one needs a consent class to know that it's assault if someone forces cake down your throat after you say you didn't want any. But what if your friend guilt trips you into eating the cake? Suppose the person who made the cake talks about how he spent hours making the cake, or sulks because you didn't try his new recipe. This is manipulation, and it is another form of sexual aggressions. In other words, the person is still trying to force you to do something you don't want to do. A man's role is not to manipulate or force anyone to have sex with them. Instead, sex and sexual consent are a mutual decision reached between people, each of whom has inherent worth that needs to be respected. If one person says no, there is no consent, period. No guilt tripping, no sulking, certainly no forcing. No means no, period. If we as men want to be effective allies to women, we must believe them when they share that they have been a victim of sexual violence. And we need to tell them that we believe them. We don't need to ask them for details. We don't need to second guess them or ask them what should have happened. We need to just believe them. Many survivors don't want or can't share their stories. And sexual aggression is so widespread, it's pretty likely that every person you're speaking with could be a survivor, the parent of a survivor, the partner of a survivor, a friend or relative of a survivor. Men do look to other men for approval and affirmation about their masculinity. And so, men, it's important for us. It's essential for us to not let boys be boys, to not let that be an excuse for sexual aggression, for sexual language or behaviors. Don't joke about sexual violence. Don't stay quiet when another man jokes about sex. Speak up when men talk about sex as a conquest or express pride in getting women to have sex with them. I can say with confidence that the majority of the people in this room have someone in their lives, whether they are aware of it or not, who has been the target of sexual aggression. It isn't funny. It isn't a joke. It isn't a conquest. So what else can we do as allies? We can fight for policies to support women who are survivors of sexual assault, including in the workplace, in the healthcare system, and in the legal system. We can vote for politicians who champion policies that will support survivors. And we can vote for politicians who don't sexually assault women. Vote for politicians who don't sexually assault women and brag about it. Joanne Allen, president of the Hunter Women's Rights Coalition at Hunter's College, wrote, "Men are essential to feminism and to ending sexual assault. If they weren't, we'd already have ended it." Men, we are called to step up and speak out. And we must be the change that the world so sorely needs. Now, I invite you to rise in body or spirit and let us sing hymn number 95, "There is More Love Somewhere." The words will be projected to your left.
Special musical guest for our service today. Her name is Joanne Allen, and she's going to be singing first a piece that was done by a rape survivor and founder of RAIN, the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network, Tori Amos. And she was one of the first musical artists to write a song about her rape experience and to put it out to the world. So thank you, Joanne.
5 a.m. Friday morning, Thursday night, far from sleep, I'm still up and driving. Can't go home, obviously, so I'll just change direction, 'cause they'll soon know where I live, and I wanna live. Got a full tank and some chips. It was me and a gun and a man and I sang, holy, holy, as he buttoned down his pants. You can laugh, it's kind of funny, the things you think in times like these. Like I haven't seen Barbados, so I must get out of this. Yes, I wore a slinky red thing. Does that mean I should spread for you, your friends, your father, Mr. Ed? It was me and a gun and a man on my back. But I haven't seen Barbados, so I must get out of this. And I know what this means. Me and Jesus a few years back used to hang, and he said, it's your choice, babe. Just remember, I don't think you'll be back in 3 days' time. So you choose well. Tell me what's right. Is it my right to be on my stomach, a Fred Seville? Me and a gun and a man on my back, but I haven't seen Barbados, so I must get out of this. And do you know Carolina, where the biscuits are soft and sweet? These things go through your head when there's a man on your back and you're pushed flat on your stomach. It's not a classic Cadillac. Me and a gun and a man on my back, but I haven't seen Barbados, so I must get out of this. I haven't seen Barbados, so I must get out of this.
Thank you. I really appreciate the gift that you're giving us all today. So, please know that the time and the stories that we share today are only a few of the experiences of billions and billions of lived experiences. And it's impossible to include everything on this subject. And whatever you feel or don't feel, all feelings are valid, and there's space for them. I've always loved Greek mythology. Of course, myths and stories can be interpreted many different ways. This particular story is one that's used to explain the changing of the seasons and the transition from winter to spring. Hades is the god of the underworld. One day he's wandering the earth. He sees the goddess Persephone gathering flowers. His heart is filled with desire, so he travels to Mount Olympus, the home of the gods. The king of the gods, Zeus, you know, the guy with the long white hair and beard and muscular arms, is there. And Hades asks if he can marry Persephone. Zeus says no, because if Persephone married Hades, she would have to spend most of her time in the underworld, and Persephone's mother, the goddess of agriculture Demeter, would never allow that to happen. Hades doesn't accept this. He kidnaps Persephone from the field of flowers. He takes her to the underworld. While she's there, Persephone has something to eat, some pomegranate seeds. She doesn't know that these were enchanted seeds and that they mean that she belongs to the underworld now. Meanwhile, her mother Demeter is wandering the earth looking for her daughter. No one will say anything. It seems as though she's just vanished. Demeter is overwhelmed with grief. As the goddess of agriculture, she refuses to bless the crops or let them grow. And the people of earth grow hungry because they have no food. Finally, Zeus and the other gods are starting to realize that they can't just let this go. Someone suggests that Demeter talk to Hades, the sun god, or Helios, the sun god, to see what he saw. After all, the sun sees everything. Helios did indeed see what happened to Persephone. She was kidnapped by Hades, taken to the underworld. Demeter is furious and refuses to make the crops grow again until Persephone is returned. But by this time, she's already been married to Hades. Zeus sees the people starving, but he knows that the marriage between Persephone and Hades has already taken place. He negotiates an agreement. Every year in winter, Persephone will return to the underworld and to her husband. The plants will die, the earth will become cold, but in the spring she will return to the surface of the earth, and the earth will start to grow again. Demeter will allow the crops to grow again. This explains why there's winter, why seasons exist. It's always been one of my favorite Greek myths. It's interesting to see a lot of the stories aren't that similar from some of the stories now. But I always started to wonder about Persephone's perspective in the story that's kind of told from everybody else's viewpoint. Persephone is just going about her life. Why were you out by yourself, they ask. Shouldn't you have brought somebody with you? I shouldn't have to be afraid to go out walking by myself. Did you scream? Did you try to get away? No. You were in the underworld all those months. You never said anything. Why are you only reporting this now? Why didn't you report this right away? I think maybe we know the answers to some of those questions, having seen some of the backlash to the Me Too movement and to the stories of survivors. And I think that my feelings have been all over the board, both as a survivor and as a woman. I'm so proud of the many survivors who have come forward, so grateful to leaders like Tarana Burke, who started the Me Too movement long before the hashtag started trending in 2017. Then I was overwhelmed. There were too many stories for me to process all at once, and I had to take a break from social media, although the movement was always very close to my heart. In some ways, this movement is a great awakening, the truth setting us free. And then there's the backlash. As a concept, society agrees that these acts are horrible, violent, maybe some of the worst acts a person could commit. In practice, when an accusation is made, people feel uncomfortable. They may be shocked, may say, that can't be true. It seems that often people rally around the accused more than the victim. And it's complicated. In the movies, a rapist or child abuser is often portrayed as transparently sinister. I'm like, yeah, I want to go within 10 miles of that person. That person is obviously a serial killer. It's 5 minutes into the show, they haven't done anything yet, but I just know they're guilty. Lock them up now. The reality, of course, is not as clear-cut. The vast majority of attacks are not random or sudden. We know our attackers. Some of them we know very well. We may love our attackers. I have. Whether or not that's because of the abuser's manipulative behavior or just because people are both a mixture of good and bad, I don't know. I do know that the truth has power. The more we share our personal truth, the more that we support victims, we make change. When people are quiet or they shame victims, we assume that we're alone or that there must have been a way that this could have been our fault. So when I share knowing that some pieces of my story might be universal, some might not be. The truth is always powerful. And my friend Rachel tells me, each one of us has a story, and all of our stories are worth sharing. The truth is that it's always dangerous to be a female. It can be even more dangerous, let's say if you are a black girl or a trans woman or any combination of other identities, but it's always dangerous. When I was 13, I was a teacher's pet. I hated gym class. My favorite classes were English and Bible. I played violin in the school orchestra. No matter how old you are when you first experience sexual violence, it's traumatic. Middle school is already difficult. These experiences began at the same time I was having a growing awareness of myself as a sexual being, having crushes on boy bands, and struggling with self-esteem. I demonstrated many of the classic warning signs of child sexual abuse, and also resulting depression and anxiety disorder that it triggered. Before this, I had been a high honor student. I was in a lot of extracurricular activities and church activities. And in general, although I was shy at first, once I got to know you, I pretty much wouldn't shut up. My clothes became baggier and baggier and obstructed more of my silhouette. Often I hid behind my hair like a curtain. Since I couldn't focus in school anymore, my grades dropped, and gradually I dropped out of all of my extracurricular activities. More than anything, I was confused. I felt like a freak. Did this mean that he was in love with me? I would get really close sometimes to reporting, but not be able to follow through. I was so terrified of my life exploding. I wondered if I would ever be able to have a normal, healthy relationship with someone, or if I was broken. My mental health conditions became even more severe. Sometimes my depression would get so bad that I would feel frozen, catatonic, and start to hallucinate. Then I got even more confused. Now I'm a mental health advocate for youth, and as such, I often share my story. Once I shared my story as an adult with a group of local teachers, and I got the question, what could we do to prevent this type of thing from happening in the future? Nothing is going to prevent all occurrences, but we can focus on doing the most that we can. We can teach about consent, tell victims it's not their fault. We can hold abusers accountable and create policies for a greater youth safety. We can try to understand that sometimes an abuser might be a person that we like, someone that we love. And sometimes the victim might be somebody that we don't really like. We can try to understand that the cover-up of sexual violence on behalf of institutions is often just as painful as the initial incident. This starts with acknowledgement that no group is full of perfect people, and cover-ups build greater public distrust. I came from a conservative branch of evangelical Christianity, and I hope that as an adult now in liberal religion, there would be fewer sexual misconduct cases in progressive religious circles. Sadly, the stories I've heard and ethics cases I've read don't seem to match that ideal. Religious messaging still matters, though. I attended evangelical and Baptist churches from birth through 17. I went to a private Christian school for middle and high school. At my church, there were high-profile cases of child sexual assault committed by our youth pastor. He was a man I idolized. Although this was not reported to the church until after the pastor's death, the church then took appropriate steps and asked anyone with information to report it to the police and also to get counseling. At the school, things were not handled appropriately when several teachers abused numerous girls. The teacher usually ended up finishing the year and then transferring to another school. As far as I know, no help was ever offered for any of the students who were usually considered at least as much or more responsible than the teachers were. In conservative religion, there was a constant emphasis on virginity and saving yourself for marriage, and I can't tell you how hypocritical that felt. While it's not equivalent by any means, I do feel sometimes like progressives talk about sexuality or losing your virginity like it's all fun. And if you're in a group of more than a handful of people, one of those people is a survivor, and I think it's important to remember that. So those are my truths, and I tell my story for two reasons. One, because I'm able to. As difficult as this was to think about it, I could do it. Every time someone shares their story, they let others know that they are not alone, that it's not their fault. One of the critiques of the Me Too movement and of many social movements is that they have not centered the voices of the oppressed, and that's true. So as a person with a lot of privilege and social power, what can I do? If I have power, if I am a leader, then it is my responsibility to use that power to create space. I know that I have the resources and support to tell my story, and also that if there is heat or blowback, I can take it, whereas some others might not be able to. When we make clear through sharing that sexual assault is ubiquitous, hopefully it will make a space for others to begin to share their stories as well. And when they do, we can support them and amplify their voices. I can also remember how none of this was easy. It's not a competition for who's had the worst life ever. That's a competition that I don't want to win and I could not win. And I do need to remember, though, how my story might have been even more difficult if I was also dealing with racism or transphobia in addition to sexism. How does this affect things like one's access to medical care or counseling? These types of violence are only one part of the traumas that are in our life stories, yet dominant culture still tells us just to deal with it, to move on. So many people have stories that are still buried inside. So where is the hope? It feels like terrible things have happened, they continue to happen, there's no end in sight. The hope is here. It's here inside each of us, witnessing to each other. When I share my stories in schools, I like to start out by saying that my story has difficult things in it, but it's ultimately hopeful. Why is it a hopeful story? Because at that time, I felt hopeless. I thought this was it for me. Now, I'm in a much better place. I'm in a loving and respectful relationship with my husband. Of course, I have a very cute pet dachshund named Frankenstein, which I've probably told some of you about. I'm drawing more than I ever did before. I love art. So many wonderful things have happened in my life. The same can happen for you, for anyone. If you can, take a second and put your hand on your belly. Are you still breathing? Good. I believe that as long as we have breath, a better life is always possible. It's only been the past couple years when I talked to fellow survivors, including people in my same community growing up, and was really able to understand fully what had happened to me. I opened up to some good friends who I could trust and shared what I had gone through with a counselor. On bad days, I rest, I create art, I listen to music. And we're going to sing, actually, one stanza from one of my favorite songs that I listen to when I'm going through a difficult time. It's number 108 in the hymnal, My Life Flows On in Endless Song. Will you please join me? Rise in body or spirit. We are now entering a time of meditation and reflection. I encourage you to take a moment to pause, to breathe, and to listen. Today's offering, appropriately enough, is going to be for Samara Counseling, and we have a guest, Mr. Mitchell, who's going to share a little bit about their organization. If you would come up.
Well, thanks for having me this morning. First of all, I'd like to thank you, the members of DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church, for your many years of support financially of SamariCare counseling services. The donations that you give to our organization go to our fee-subsidized services, which we call our Access program, which enables people who could not otherwise afford needed professional counseling to have funds that would help them to receive that counseling. Thank you on behalf of the young adolescent girl who was feeling very low in self-esteem and like her life was meaningless as the result of pressure at school, bullying, who finally found a counselor at SamariCare who began to understand and help her to find hope again. Thank you on behalf of the young mom who, when her oldest girl turned the same age that she was when she began being sexually abused as a child, began moving into a depression and not understanding what was going on because she had pushed back the memories of that abuse. She finally found a counselor at SamariCare who understood and helped her begin to move through that trauma. Thank you on behalf of the young dad who, feeling pressure at work, financial pressure at home, thought of ending his life and finally found a counselor at SamariCare who helped him to begin to find hope and healing again in his life. 46 years ago, 3 faith communities here in Naperville had the foresight of starting a counseling center that was a not-for-profit that would provide quality behavioral health care to people from all economic backgrounds and would not turn away people because of inability to pay, and that would hold spirituality, no matter what your belief, as important in the healing process. 46 years later, SamariCare is now a significant presence in all of South DuPage County, providing counseling service to age 2 to 92, we like to say. We have a strong child and adolescent program, an adult services and a senior services program. We have strong partnership with Loaves and Fishes and Bridge communities. And in Bridge communities, we actually provide counseling services. We are their primary behavioral health care service, working mainly with single moms and their children. And a lot of the moms that we work with have experienced trauma in their lives. And we're there to help them through that as well. 12 years ago, we built our own facility here in Naperville, and we knew that someday we would be expanding it, and we are going to be doing that this year to grow and serve more people. We're dedicating part of that space to serving children and adolescents in particular. Know that your help of SamariCare is helping us to reach out and help many other people, and in particular those with trauma. The second leading cause of death among adolescents today is suicide in this country. The second leading cause of death among adolescents through young adults is suicide. The rate of depression and anxiety is staggering in this country. And the rate of suicide, given our talk this morning, among young adolescents, girls, has tripled since 2009. And it's no wonder why. I think it has a lot to do with what we've been talking about this morning. So thank you on behalf of all of the clients we serve, the some 1,500 clients we serve every year, the some 600 plus new cases we see every year. Thank you on behalf of each and every one of those individuals for your support of SamariCare. I'm going to be at a table with Karen Doyle, who's the director of our outreach and advancement at SamariCare. After the service, if you have questions, feel free to come by and talk with us. Thanks again for this time.
And I want to say thank you as well. I've referred some people out that direction, and I've appreciated the work that you've been able to do for them. The loose plate collection will go to SamariCare, but if you want to write a check, please write DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church in the line, and the memo, in the pay line, and then in the memo line, write SamariCare. Thank you. Please give generously.
Normally in a service, the use of these candles means one of two things: It's either Christmas Eve service or it's a vigil, but not today. If you did not receive a candle when you first came in and you would like one, please raise your hand so the ushers may give you one. This light symbolizes our support of and our bearing witness to justice for all survivors of sexual assault and harassment. It is for those of us in this room, those who we are holding in our hearts, and particularly for those who never received justice. In a moment, Rev Tom and I are going to light our candles and then give a light to the person at the end of each row. Please tip the unlit candle to meet the lit candle, like so. Keep your flame going as Joanne sings until the benediction, when I will invite you to extinguish them. So thank you, Joanne, for singing.
Skies are crying, I am watching, catching teardrops in my hands. Only silence as it's ending, like we never had a chance. Do you have to make me feel like there's nothing left of me? You can take everything I have, you can break everything I am, like I'm made of glass, like I'm made of paper, and go on and try to tear me down. I will be rising from the ground like a skyscraper, like a skyscraper. As the smoke clears, I awaken and untangle you from me. Would it make you feel better to watch me while I bleed? All my windows still are broken, but I'm standing on my feet. You can take everything I have, you can break everything I am, like I'm made of glass, like I'm made of paper, and go on and try to tear me down. I will be rising from the ground like a skyscraper, like a skyscraper. Go run, 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 I'm gonna stay right here, watch you disappear. Yeah, go run, 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 yeah, it's a long way down, but I'm closer to the clouds up here. You can take everything I have, you can break everything I am, like I'm made of glass, like I'm made of paper, and go on and try to tear me down. I will be rising from the ground like a skyscraper, like a skyscraper, like a sky, like a skyscraper, like a sky, like a skyscraper. Like a skyscraper.
Thank you so much. Although we now extinguish our candles, we carry the commitment to compassion and justice for survivors of sexual violence always. Thank you for being here, for opening your hearts to receive this message. Let us go forth in hope, and as you are able to, please greet one another and share the love and warmth of this community. Thank you.